All right. Yeah, this is gonna be dope. Actually, no, I gotta do it that way. There we go. All right. So this is gold. This is gold. It doesn't get better than this. That Benjamin Netanyahu is supposedly now a Holocaust denier. This is fucking gold. Okay. Uh, was he inaccurate? Oh fuck no. Fuck no. This area of research is very well done, actually. Um, but the biggest problem is that a lot of this research was only confirmed after the KGB released their files on things having to do with World War II. John Loftus is Loftus, has done amazing work on this. A man named David Livingstone actually wrote a book directly on this subject that is amazingly well done because he reads Arabic and he is a Muslim. And what a lot of he's explained a lot of this. And so his book, White Soldiers, Black Terror, is what it's called. There's another book also written, I believe, by a Muslim called The Black Banners that concerns some of this. So, what the whole deal is, Benjamin Netanyahu did map out something that was absolutely correct in what Haj Amin al-Husseini, his whole influence on fascist thinking in the Middle East. So the reason why the British, the BBC don't want this coming up, all of these soft socialist Jews, a lot of these literati who are writing about this, a lot of the liberals really are attacking Netanyahu on this one, and it's because they don't do their homework and they can't have their ideologies exposed, the history of their ideologies. So Islamic fascism is directly attached to the progressive movement. The low literati, these sort of intellectual elites of the day who are associated with things like the Memphis Misraim rite of Freemasonry. So that's like the Middle Eastern Freemasonry that Italians, a lot of Italians, I think Cagliostro is his name, had a lot to do with the development of. So what these were, a lot of these groups that were, say, not exactly Freemasonic, but were fundamentally Freemasonic, they were into the idea of merging religions. David Livingstone has brought this up as syncretism. This is actually what the goal is, syncretism. It's kind of this weird, holistic, mystical, socialist form of government. In a lot of sci-fi and fantasy, especially the Japanese, are particularly good at making settings in anime that are syncretist settings, and it's because, of course, they had a fascination with this ideology too, and we never, who knows anything about Japan? I mean, really, how much do you know about Japan and its thinkers? You don't. Almost nobody who could possibly see this has any idea about Japan and its thinkers. Well, once you find out some of what their whole motivation for being involved on the Axis side in World War II, why they had this weird kinship with Himalayans and Germans and Turks, that's its own thing. Like, it's actually a world of thinking that came out of these 1800s weird mystical, like Madame Blavatsky, Manly P. Hall kind of people, the OTO, and frickin' Aleister Crowley. These are who we saw in the West. That's who we saw in the West. In the Muslim world, there were other people like this who would go from country to country, and there would be problems. Like, people, there would suddenly be riots. The sects would suddenly burn some other person's shit down, or something would happen. I'm thinking a lot of it had to do with opium trade, actually. So one of the most important people with this is attached to the Salafist movement. So that's the modernists, or the reformists, the reformist movement of Islam. So these people were trying to make the world like modern, relatively modern Turkey. Turkey circa 1930s. And so the Young Turks movement, fundamentally, really, that's Salafism. That what you saw with the Young Turks movement and then Islamic Nazism, that's what the Salafists are. Now they're all dressed up in goofy outfits because they need funding from the Wahhabists. Now, one would be like, no, but Wahhabism and Salafism are two entirely different ideologies. One is take it back to, 17, take it back to 1000, year 1000, or year 1200, but the Salafists are like, no, we want electricity and women without hijabs on. Well, that's why Egypt was the way it was. That's why the entire Muslim world that had any modernization at all, women had uncovered hair, they wore skirts. That's why Iraq was the way it was, because Iraq was a sort of along Salafist lines. It was fundamentally a form of National Socialism that was Islamic. That you could be modern, you could be religious, the trains run on time. So this is the problem that all the liberals and the buckfutters and the cocksuckers that are always talking about how Christianity had something to do with the Third Reich. It's like, no, almost all National Socialists throughout Europe, in France, in the Ukraine, that's what you're dealing with now. Thank you, Hillary Clinton, for bringing those guys back from the dead. I mean, literally, Nazi zombies. That's what we're dealing with now. Nazi zombies. And so Netanyahu nailed it, because al-Husseini's sidekick was his nephew, al-Husseini. But to not go to Nuremberg, he changed his name to al-Arafat. Yes, Yasser Arafat was a descendant, ideologically, of Nazism. That would probably explain a lot. So then he starts up the PLO. Why does the PLO have authority? Because of the Arab League. So this basically means Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and actually at the time Egypt as well, because Nasser, he was a fascist as well. He liked all that business. What's it called? Saudi Arabia. Bahrain. That's another one. Why do you think these people suppress the Shia? I mean, like, why do people think, oh, no, you see the Persians and the Arabs, they've always had, no, they're fucking asshole bigot motherfuckers. They have this thinking that everything should be Arabian. Like the British fascists thought everything should be British. It's that they really, there's people really think this fucking shit. And that, because the trains will run on time. And so all this is about is the Trans-Arabian pipeline, the pipeline from Iraq to Haifa. So they knew that they started to look at it, and the Palestinians were not trustworthy. Fundamentally, they just were not trustworthy. They were not that smart. They were not that, they don't get things built on time. And they are constantly, sucking their teeth every time you tell them to do something. And so the British were like, this isn't going to work. And the Germans knew, too, this isn't going to work. So what this all ended up as is that pipeline needed to happen. They needed that to go to Haifa, or else they would have to plan all this other shit out. And so it ends up that what it looks like is that there was a deal made in Germany. Some kind of weird coalition that is very difficult to find. It's not on paper. It might be a handshake thing. Who quite knows? But it's people know because they see what happened. And what happened was the kibbutzniקים, they've been there for quite a while. Anybody who's been to Israel like me, you were on a kibbutz. And I bet at some point you were like, wait a second. So as soon as the state was formed, these things were already here. And they repelled the invaders. So once you start turning over, wait, but if these were already here, that means Jews had been, because Jews had been there since the late 1800s. Going back to the Holy Land. Zionists had been doing that since the late 1800s. They had hundreds of thousands of Jews showing up in Palestine, in British Palestine, throughout the early 1900s. This was a British and German and French thing. And if you don't know this unless you read up on Zionism and read up on Jewish cultural history, this was a problem. And so this was so much of a problem that even before the Ottoman Empire really collapsed, the Ottomans even caught on to this. They started to realize, like, wait, no, Jews might move back there. So they actually sponsored people to move to that area to sort of reestablish it. Especially once Lawrence of Arabia found out there was all that oil, British Petroleum stepping in. That basically lots of people from the Ummah funded really Arab colonization of the British Palestinian Mandate, what becomes the British Palestinian Mandate. And it was because they simply were really worried about the sheer number of Jews who could move there if they wanted to. From Europe, specifically from Europe, because remember, they didn't really have freedom of travel throughout the Middle East. So, Benny Netanyahu's not wrong. Netanyahu just nailed it. There's all sorts of stuff on this. And so what he's really referring to is the transfer agreement. And that was, and there's a lot of people who this is one of the most disgusting betrayals that you could ever imagine. Where, I mean, this was really an agreement that it looks like between the National Socialists and the Zionists to repatriate the Jewish people in the Middle East. It looks like this was really a plan, and that And one of the key reasons we know about this is because IBM was involved. IBM was who was tracking. They did all the data collection for the Axis in World War II. And the whole reason why they even were hired to do it is because Hitler admired IBM's work for the American Planned Parenthood program. That's where it ties into the progressive movement. So, he was right. Nobody can talk about this. And now that he's brought this up, this is why leftists everywhere are shitting their fucking pampers. And those who are on the alternative right, if you don't pick this up and run with it, you're going to get screwed. And so, because a lot of the Israeli opposition, they're doing everything they can to not bring this up, because it indicts the kibbutzniks and all the peaceniks over there. It indicts all the socialists and Reds throughout the Jewish diaspora. And then it makes everybody who's a progressive and a liberal, it makes them, oh wait, yeah, a lot of your ideas were really popular with National Socialists. And that's really weird that now Hillary Clinton is sort of speaking for that group of people, and when she was Secretary of State, she somehow got a bunch of National Socialists to take over Ukraine. That's so weird. And it's really weird that once we have this president who has some loose ties to Islam, especially when a government was overthrown and he happens to be there, and and his family in Africa happening to be there while all this crazy shit is happening with sort of fascistic Islam in Africa. Oh no, there's no ties here. This isn't multiple generations of elite people doing what the fuck they want. No, the buckfutters, the cocksuckers, the Reds, all the journalists. Oh yeah, you really do your homework. No, you need to read up Ed Black. He wrote about the transfer agreement. You could watch hours of him talking about it with all the documents there and present. John Loftus talked about this, and David Livingstone's talked about this too. So, yeah, Benjamin Netanyahu is called out. The funders from Germany of Zionism that basically might have sold their people down the river. And also exposed that the Crown had a plan, either that they were going to get the Arabs or the Jews to pump all that oil. Think about this, because now you're seeing the outcome. Now you're seeing it in Syria. That's what you're fucking seeing.